Senator Mark Warner of Virginia to talk about the Startup Act, a jobs creation initiative. Really quickly, though, gentlemen, before we get to that, Senator Warner, what do you think he means we're not giving up on this? Is this a fight for Cordray in particular, or a nomination of their choosing, depending if it's somebody else?
Well, I think Mr. Cordray should have been confirmed. I know Jerry may have different views on this. I think at the end of the day, though, we've got to make sure that the unregulated part of the financial industry gets the same kind of rules, particularly in consumer protection, that the banks and credit unions and even the larger banks already play by. So a level playing field makes sense, and this Bureau ought to go ahead and be able to move forward.
If he were, I mean, I guess, Senator Moran, is there a suitable nominee? Given the broader concerns about the infrastructure of the Bureau, the budget of the Bureau, the accountability of the Bureau, will anyone do?
I think that when the president says that he's going to move forward and continue this fight, I hope what he means is he's going to work with all members of Congress to address those issues you just said about the accountability, a board, not a single director, the financing of the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. I don't think it matters who the nominee is. I don't think that's the issue here. There's not discussion about Mr. Cordray's qualifications. The discussion is we need to get this right from the very beginning, and therefore we need to have a different structure in place so that Mr. Cordray or another nominee of the president can be confirmed.
I want to talk to you about this bipartisan jobs plan. You're calling it the Startup Act, five-prong initiative that Senator Warner really looks like it's trying to turn the United States into an enterprise zone, right? A zone that does attract business, something you know something about.
Well, I spent 20 years as an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist, and the data is in. I mean, the vast majority of new jobs being created over the last 20 years haven't come from big established firms, haven't even come from small businesses. They've come from startup firms that grow very rapidly. And we've got to remove some of the regulatory burden. We've got to make it easier for patient capital to invest in these firms. We've got to attract and keep the world's best talent that we oftentimes educate. And, you know, we might not have the kind of discussions we just recently had about the Consumer Protection Bureau if you actually start with a bill that's bipartisan. And Jerry has been working on this for a long time. We're going to be great partners on this, and I think this could be a jobs bill that actually could get bipartisan support.
Is it? Does it mean a moratorium, Senator Moran, on regulations?
It requires a cost-benefit analysis for new regulations, and it also brings in the independent agencies that are not currently covered in that process. So we're going to at least slow down, get a better analysis of the regulatory environment. We recognize in this bill that you cannot address all the regulatory issues that an entrepreneur, a small businessman or woman face in trying to start or grow a business. That's a major issue for our Congress to address, and it's an important one. We need a different regulatory environment, and we need a certain regulatory environment. Lots of bills to do that. We recognize in this one bill we're not going to address all those, but we also know that that's a significant component in changing the environment in which an entrepreneur can better succeed. You know, the number one issue, I think, in the country is job creation. This bill addresses that. And the number one complaint about Congress and Washington, D.C. is we can't get along. Mark and I are proving that we can come up with good ideas in a bipartisan way that grows the economy, creates jobs, and does it in a way that we think has success. We're not looking for this moment on your network to talk about it. We're not looking for a headline that says we've introduced a bill. We're looking for success, not for ourselves, but for folks who want to go out and start a business, and in the process of pursuing their American dream, their success, they put people to work.
How broad is the support for this so far, Senator Warner?
Well, I think we're going to see broad-based support. I mean, you know, there's not anybody in the business community that hasn't said over the last 10 years, you know, at least on immigration, we ought to find a way to staple a green card to those folks who are educated, graduate degrees in science and engineering and math, skills that we need to keep in this country. This bill does that. Lots of folks have said, how do we make sure that immigrant entrepreneurs get a chance to start a business, hire Americans here? This bill does this. How do we make sure that research that goes on in universities actually gets out of the lab and into commercialization? This bill takes a step forward. So there's an awful lot to like on this bill. I don't care which partisan label you put to it. It's about creating jobs, as Jerry has said, and I think you're going to see some action on this.
And does it mean necessarily that you two gentlemen agree on things like a payroll tax, which the president just finished talking about? Senator Warner?
Well, it means, let me assure you, I think we need some stimulus. I have some concerns about the payroll tax holiday over the longer term, that we don't create another embedded way of driving our deficit bigger. We're going to have to sort through this, but at least, what we're starting with here is we got to get stimulus in effect. We've got to get our deficit under control, but we've got to create jobs. And what Jerry and I are working on here is a real, true job creator.
Well, the clock is ticking on that, that's for sure. Gentlemen, appreciate your time. We'll watch closely. Jerry Moran, Mark Warner joining us from the Hill. Before the